Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Let's Max Warframe. True to my current form of checking out weapons with interesting mechanics, let's take a look at a weapon that came as a suggestion from Blue77 Wolf in a previous video, the Buzlok. Now, the Buzlok was a weapon that's been in the game for a really long time now, and was one that I ignored when it originally came out. Seems to be a pattern here, me managing to ignore all of the mechanically interesting ones, but since I'm looking at the weapons with those interesting mechanics and enjoying it, I decided to go back and take a look. So what sort of stats are we looking at with the weapon? Comes with a base damage of 45, that's not terrible. The majority, 33.8, comes in the form of impact, 6.7 as slash, 4.5 as puncture. Does have a pretty decent magazine size of 75, means it's actually got a fairly good sustained fire. It's kind of pretty much downhill from there though. Crit chance of 10%, 200 multiplier, it's not really strong enough for a crit build. 10% status chance isn't really enough for a proper status build either, so it's mostly going to be a straight elemental build, which is the weaker of the three options. Add that into a very strong recoil, which means it's poor at long range without modding to reduce recoil. Super slow flight speed, meaning that at long range it's actually difficult to hit the targets in the first place. Plus the low fire rate and low accuracy. Not looking so good really, is it? Maybe its special mechanic can dig it out of a rather poor hole that it's in. Well, if you use your secondary fire while aiming, you will spend 10 ammo to fire a tracking round that will attach itself to whatever it hits. And then for every shot you fire with your primary fire, it will be 100% accurate and track to the spot where the tracking shot has landed. This effect lasts for 20 seconds. Thankfully punch through doesn't actually affect this anymore, because I'm pretty sure it used to. I seem to remember putting punch through on this. The tracking round would go through everything and then you wouldn't actually hit anything at all. This means you can actually use something like Ibarra's Navigator to guide the tracking shot around corners and then bend the bullets around the corner, allowing you to shoot in safety. This is also 100% accurate, so even if you use something like heavy caliber, it means that if you actually manage to stick the tracking shot to the face, you're still going to hit the face every single time with no accuracy loss whatsoever. Although heavy caliber really does heavily affect the accuracy of the tracking shot itself. In terms of build, I actually went with a build that improves weapon handling as my primary one. I've got 5 former on here, we've got 3V and 2 dash in total. Serration, split chamber, we've got shred to try and buff the slow fire rate and add punch through. 3 90% elementals depending on the faction you're facing. And 2 quality of life mods, we've got terminal velocity on there to speed up not only the primary fire shot but also the tracking shots, and makes the application of damage a huge amount easier. We've also got stabilizer on there, which is going to try and reduce the recoil and make the weapon far easier to use. Second build is more of a straight damage build, trying to maximize the damage output. But I also want to proc a few status procs along the way. This time we've got Serration, Split Chamber, Shred, same start as last time. However, this time I went with 2 60% dual stat elementals, bring the status chance up to just under 40%. Meaning you're going to proc roughly 2 in 5 shots, which isn't too bad. Then 2 90% elementals to bring up the elemental damage even further. Then buffing that factional damage even further with primed Bane mods. This build is not very accurate, the flight time is terrible, but on the other hand the damage isn't horrible. So, kind of swings and roundabouts really. But do I think it's worth throwing the former onto the weapon, maxing it out? It's a tough one to call. Okay, so you can get the damage up to being reasonable and able to be used in a sortie, but that's at the expense of making the weapon actually fairly painful to use. The flight speed of the projectiles, it's so unbelievably slow, to the extent that while you can have good damage, the actual application of damage is terrible, and that's the main thing with projectile weapons. So while the numbers on paper can be good, if the application of the damage isn't there, it's not really the damage it can put out. It's the Bolter Prime scenario all over again. On paper, back in the day, the Bolter Prime had the ridiculously high DPS. However, because of it being a projectile weapon, applying that damage almost never happened perfectly. So while everyone was going mental over the Bolter Prime being the overpowered weapon of choice, the Soma Prime was outperforming it consistently because it actually applies the damage that it should be doing. The weapon itself isn't that bad, to be honest. It will kill anything on the star chart fairly easily. Even with a build with the quality of life mods on there like I have, it's still more effective and more efficient to use the weapon as a giant badass sounding LMG with a scope than trying to use the tracking shots to hit those weak spots. The tracking shot does make the weapon more usable at higher levels, In the sorties, for example, placing the tracking shot on the head means immediate headshot multipliers. So with the second build, you can do some decent damage and be effectively, but personally I find the tracking shot too clunky to work, often miss very slightly, and then you'll have to use the additional 10 ammo to replace it, otherwise you're going to miss everything. But that also means that your magazine is already 20 shots down, 20 rounds out of the magazine before you've even started firing. So the potential is there on the weapon if you can make use of it, but I found it too frustrating. Mainly because of one key detail that might not affect all of you guys that much, which is my colour blindness. In a huge amount of situations, I literally cannot see the scope at all, which really does make landing those tracking shots almost impossible. Now, I know someone in the comments is going to mention a crit build, but personally I felt it wasn't reliable enough, or realistically, it wasn't really that realistic to pull off. I did test it out in the simulacrum, a full crit build with argon scope and landing the tracking shot on the head. The damage was actually pretty decent, provided you hit the head. You could shred level 100 heavy gunners pretty easily, especially if you have an Arcane Avenger that procs as well. But when I just took that into the game, the actual game itself, I found that accurately hitting the head with the tracking shot, with the million of things going on at the same time, all the knockdowns, all that's going on, and then killing them, it was so difficult that it just made it so ineffective, or so frustrating, it's unreal. So yes, the crit build could theoretically work, and does work if you like the tracking shot mechanic and make it work, but I don't personally, and maybe that is in part being difficult as hell for me to see the scope. I have no idea. The most fun I personally had with this weapon was taking the first build, making the projectiles faster, decreasing the recoil, and then going up full LMG mode with it. If you don't think you need one of those two quality of life mods on there, whack on magazine warp to bring the magazine size up to 98. Prime fast hands to reduce its rather long reload speed to a more manageable 1.9 seconds. Hell, you could even replace a mod with more fire rate just to make it more of an insane LMG. The Buzlok's a weapon that is kind of fun to derp around the star chart with. Sometimes it's better not to push weapons out of their comfort zone, and to have fun with them where they are suited. So the min-maxer in me says no, don't former it. If you're thinking of taking it into sorties, you'll be disappointed when it doesn't perform. But the player bored of standard meta weapons being way overkill for the star chart says go for it, it's pretty damn fun. Now I hope you enjoy my pretty in-depth look at the Buzlok. Next week is going to be Neja week, so expect the modular episodes to return, starting with Necros's augments that I missed when I did his suit up, moving on to Neja since he only has one augment right now, and then I will end up with a suit up next Friday. It's time to do one of these theme weeks again, since I really enjoy making them. My usual Armoured Warfare content will also be happening alongside it, so it's going to be a very busy week and a lot of content to enjoy. Talking of content to enjoy though, you may have noticed that I'm slowly creeping up to the 30,000 subscriber mark, and I've already started preparations for that huge milestone. I want to give back to as many of you as possible, and to do that I will be doing a 12-hour live stream to celebrate. I will have platinum codes to give away, I will have glyphs for you peeps in the chat, I will also have some T64A Hunter codes for Armoured Warfare to give away as well, one of the most sought after premium tanks in the game right now. So smash that subscribe button, get your friends, family, cat, dog, whoever, because once we hit that, I will have a ton of stuff to give away. As always, many thanks for the huge support you've all shown me on my channel, and I shall see you in the next video.